Our topic, tiny soldiers, sailors, and airmen, how the children of active duty military thrive, is what I'm going to share with you today. Here are a couple of the things that we're going to discuss. Give you just a brief introduction of who I am. One of the things I always like to know, what qualifies you to stand there and tell me what you're telling me? How do you know this information? Why do you know this information? And I'm going to give you an introduction to the military branches. We'll talk a little bit about what is an active duty military child and teen. How do we classify that? What are the psychological effects of being a military child and teen? Let me say this. Does it mean you're going to have psychological effects by being a military child and teen? Absolutely not. But there are some things that just because of the nature of their lifestyle that they are going to endure and face. We'll talk a little bit about deployment impact, and then I'll end the presentation talking about some of the strength-based treatment therapeutic options that myself, my business partner at A&E, that we offer, and some other experiences I've had when working with military families. Who am I? I graduated right here in San Antonio from Sam Houston High School some 15 years ago, which is crazy because it looks like it was like yesterday. But it was a little while ago, it was a little while. I know you can't believe it, but it's true, it's true. So, born and raised right here on the east side of San Antonio. I went to all of the SAISD schools. I am a product of the school district that they say is not good, and yes, we are. I joined the United States Air Force after 3 years at San Antonio College. I met with the academic advisor that said, you know this is a 2-year school, right? I was like, yeah, but this is a math class, I can't pass. So I kept going through it, and I said, well, you know, I'm going in the military. I've already kind of decided I don't really need to pass it, you know, just like give me a D so I can get what I need to get and get out. Went into the military was the best decision I ever made in my life. I loved being a part of the United States Air Force. My job in the military, believe it or not, was IT. I was a knowledge operations manager, tier 1 support, right? People, I can't print, something's wrong with my keyboard. I'm clicking this, but it won't open. Ma'am, is your mouse hooked up to the computer? Oh my God, Airman Woods, you're great. Thank you. Thank you. That's what I did for a long time. And it's funny, right? Because everybody's like, wow, you're IT. No, I tell people to plug things in and it works. So that's what I did. I deployed in 2007 with Operation Iraqi Freedom. My deployment time was not the horrific stories that you see on a lot of media. Was it intense? Absolutely. Did I get shot at? Yep. But it was not this massive, oh my God, I'm dragging bodies out of the field. That's not what happened. And I was only there for about 90 days, believe it or not. You hear a lot of stories of people deploying for months and months, years at a time. That does happen. I was fortunate. I was in Iraq for 92 days and back home. When I returned home from Iraq, I stopped in Korea for 30 days to do an assignment there. When I was in Korea, I started showing some symptoms of an autoimmune condition. So I got back home, started seeing doctors, all this kind of weird stuff was happening. My fingers were changing colors. And I was like, I must have ate something. Later on, I ended up being diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called scleroderma, which means hard skin. So I received a full medical retirement in 2010. In the midst of all of this, one day I got orders here to San Antonio, to Lackland. I was like, cool, I'm coming back home. I'd been here about 4 months, and then there was a ring on the doorbell. I opened the door, and there was a CPS worker with my brother and my sister standing next to her. And she said, are you Aisha Woods? And I looked at them and I said, nope. Not me. But my brother and sister had been removed from my mother. And my mother and I were estranged at that season, so they needed a conservator. And I said, okay, I guess they can come in. I became a single parent at 25 years old of a 12-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl. And I remember looking at them like, well, what do you guys do? What do you do? I don't have kids. I don't know what kids do. What do you eat? What do you like to do? So that happened while I was still active duty. So interestingly enough, this very topic that I'm speaking on, I became a parent of these military children. They became military dependents. And there was a whole side of the military that I had not been privy to as I wasn't a parent. Now I have 2 children. There was a whole bunch of paperwork I had to do because of these kids. And I was like, wow, does every military member go through this? This is pretty intense. So as I stated, I got a full medical retirement in October 2010. My business partner and I went to Fox and the Hound one day, eating wings, and we said, dude, we ought to open a practice. And A&E was born over wings and Heineken's. That's exactly what happened, and we have successfully built our practice over the years. We work with a lot of adolescents, families. We work with military families. We do a lot of work with foster kids and with CPS. So I'm going to give you just an introduction into the branches of service. The United States military is made up of 4 branches. You have the United States Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines. The Coast Guard is a part of the United States military, but only during wartime. Okay, when we are not at war, the Coast Guard is more of a state or a federal entity. Okay? The United States Army is comprised of just short of 500,000 active duty members. So what is active duty? Because that's a term you're going to hear a lot today. Active duty means that the individual that's in uniform is serving the country full time. That is their job. They have either enlisted, which is what the enlisted side is, or they have commissioned, meaning they're officers. Okay? You've heard of Guard, I'm sure. You've heard of the Reserve. Those individuals serve the military in what we would call a part-time sense. Okay? They still work regular 9-to-5 jobs as civilians. Okay? What's a civilian, right? You guys are all civilians. Anybody that probably hasn't served in the military is what we military people identify as civilians. Okay, so active duty individuals are people who serve full-time in our United States military. So 500,000 people serve active duty in the Army, which is a lot of people, okay? There are over 100 Army installations in the U.S. and overseas. The term installation, how many of you familiar with Fort Sam here in San Antonio? That is an Army installation, okay? Sometimes referred to as an Army base or an Army post. For this presentation, I'm going to use the term installation because all 3 of them are kind of interchangeable, okay? 95% of all Army installations have family housing. That picture is an actual picture of Army housing at an installation in Savannah, Georgia, called Fort Stewart. The United States Air Force, who? The best branch. That's right, girl. Give her extra CEU. Right there. We have a little over 300,000 active duty members. Now, you see a whole lot more numbers here on this slide with the Air Force. The Air Force has a very strategic kind of breakout as to how their airmen serve family members and take care of family members. Over 400,000 family members are supported by active duty personnel. What does that mean, supported? That means an active duty Air Force member is responsible for either children, a spouse, or even parents, or maybe nieces and nephews, or some type of family member is being supported by this active duty member. About 322,000 family members reside in an airman's household. That's a lot of people that these particular airmen are actually responsible for. And when we say responsible financially, what does that also mean? Health, education, all of the things that encompass you being responsible for an individual. That's what they take on. There are 97 Air Force installations around the world, and about 70% of the installations have base housing. The United States Navy is made up of about 330,000 Navy servicemen. They have over 100 ports of call. That's how they identify their installations. They don't call them bases or posts. It's a port of call. Why is it a port? Because normally they're sitting on the water. Does that mean this is the only place that Navy people can be stationed? Not at all. They can be stationed at any base in the world if it calls for it, okay? All stateside ports of call offer base housing. This is an interesting and kind of a unique aspect of the Navy. Every single Navy post has family housing. The Air Force installations are not like that. The Army installations are not like that. You've probably heard of Camp Bullis. That's out kind of by Fiesta, Texas way. You can't live on Camp Bullis. There's no family housing there. That is strictly for mission purposes. The Navy, every single base that they have has housing for their members. And then we have the United States Marine Corps. Now, the Marine Corps is what we consider a division of the U.S. Navy, so they don't have their own installations. They are stationed within all of the other branches. They can be stationed at any base technically, they do have some what we call outfits, meaning there's a section of this base that's strictly Marines. It only belongs to the Marines. But you won't necessarily hear, oh, that's a Marine base there. Might be in a Marine outfit, but not its own actual installation. So with that, the Navy or the Marines are housed wherever they're stationed. There are Marines that are stationed on Lackland. There are Marines that are stationed at Maxwell, where I used to live in Alabama. They are able to take part of that housing as well. What is a military child? How do we identify what a military child is? A military child is a person, of course, under the age of 18 that gets their support, at least 50% of their support, from a military member. Okay? Of course, we have situations where military children are in separate homes, parents are divorced, so maybe they live full-time with mom, but dad is the active duty member. We don't consider that person a military child. Why is that? Because they don't have to deal with some of the things the military child has to deal with. They're probably not going to move a whole lot if they're with that parent that is more stable and not with that active duty parent. The flip side of that is we have a lot of single parents in the military. Those military children kind of encompass the total of what happens in the life of a military child from birth till they get to be 18 years old. Let me show you this video. It's a real good one about these children kind of identifying what makes them a military child.
We get to go to cool things because we get to go to cool places and things because my mom's in the military and my dad used to be in the military.
Be like my dad.
Yeah, you get to go to the park and play around.
You know that you're always safe.
That sometimes my mom is deployed and so she has to go off to other places and I can't see her. Sometimes you don't know how to do the monkey bars.
Now get us this here. This I cut, and then it snapped my line. Snapped in my line. Like, bam! It's like, it snapped in my line.
Yeah.
Through skateboarding because all my friends skateboard and so do I, so that's what we have in common.
Well, I'm really friendly and so a lot of people, I find some other girls and I be friends with them.
I make friends by like telling jokes a lot. What's a ghost's favorite berry?
I don't know.
A blueberry.
So the young man was saying he enjoys fishing. And he was saying, but my line broke and my dad fixes my line. The line broke. So that's what he was saying that he loves about being a military child. He goes fishing with his dad. What are some of the qualities of military children? Military children are first and foremost very strong and very resilient. What's another child population we tend to see that a lot with? Foster children. Children who have to be separated from their caregivers for whatever the reason, whether it be positive, whether it be service, whether it wasn't a safe situation, they have a tendency to be very strong and very resilient. Military children are world citizens. If you've ever talked to a military child and said, hey, where are you from? And it's like, okay. So I was born in Germany, but when I was 2, I moved to California, and I started kindergarten there, but then we moved. They're world citizens. They don't get to say, oh, yeah, I'm right from this side of town. That's where my aunt is, and that's where my grandma is, and that's where I went to Boys and Girls Club. They're from everywhere. They're from everywhere. They support each other. It's kind of a third culture, especially when primarily of their time has been spent overseas. It's very interesting if you've ever come in contact to military children or adults who were military children, and they just kind of have a different view of the U.S. simply because they've lived in other places. They've experienced other cultures. They've seen things that we don't necessarily have to see and deal with here. We're kind of spoiled here. I didn't realize that until I got into the military, until I deployed and I saw people's homes with mud floors, like there wasn't a real concrete slab. They were on mud, and it blew my mind that this was acceptable. But it humbled me. And that's something that I see a lot with some of the military children I've had the ability to be around. extremely humble, very humble. They have a sense of service. If you've ever talked to especially younger military children, you heard the little boy say, you know, my dad keeps us safe. They know that their parents are doing something remarkable with their lives. Even though it takes them away from their parents at times, they have an ability to say, man, we're safe because of my dad, or we're safe because of my mom. And there's a sense of pride there that they have into their own country. I'll always remember when I go to different events, I can tell who the military children are when the national anthem's played. Like, they jump up, and it's just a sense of pride that has been instilled in them about their parents serving our country that they're aware of. Active duty military children and teens, about 1.2 million school-age children belong to active military families. That's a lot of kids. That's a lot of children. 86,000 of them attend what we call Department of Defense schools, DoD schools. And these schools are located in many of the installations that are not here in the U.S. And that is so these American children can learn American culture, whether they're living in Hong Kong, Germany, wherever they are. I remember in 7th grade here, we had to learn Texas history. And I asked one of the military kids when I was prepping for this, well, what history did you learn that one year that was supposed to be, you know, kind of your state history? And she said, well, I learned the history of Germany and what really happened in Berlin. And I cracked up laughing. That's where she was at that time, so that's what she learned. Active duty military members move about a minimum of 6 times in a 20-year career. I was active duty for 7 years, and I moved 3 times. Now, one time was just, again, temporary, which I'll talk about that in a moment. But imagine if I had children. Because every time I move, they have to move. So in a 20-year span, 6 different assignments. In a 12-year academic career, kindergarten, 12th grade, that's 6 schools. So that means every 2 years, a new school. Every 2 years, you have to be a new student. Every 2 years, you have to learn a new lunch number. Every 2 years, you have to be the new kid to learn the new culture. Where you were at this school, they skateboarded, but at this school, skateboarding sucks, so you can't do that. Every 2 years, you're having to reaccomplish this. And it can be quite taxing. It's taxing on an adult having to make these moves and readjust to a new area. It can be exciting, but nerve-wracking at the same time for a child. That's intense. That's intense.